Turn, O virgin daughter of Israel, to these your highways by which you went. Welcome to Reunion Roadmap, a place to discover the people and communities along the highway of restoration for Israel's house of Joseph. Reunion Roadmap is a BYNA Yosef North America production. Be our guest for the next hour as we meet the people of the emerging house of Joseph here in North America. Hello, this is Stefania Pappas from BYNA Yosef North America, and with me is Al McCarn, our Executive Director. And we are going to the state of Washington to interview a couple that I know very well. And who's that couple, Al?
Hey, that's Ron and Candi Runyon, the prayer directors for BYNA Yosef North America. We have known them ever since the first BYNA Yosef Congress in Ariel, Israel. They were also there at the inaugural summit where BYNA was established in 2016 in St. Petersburg, Florida. And we did interview them 3 years ago, 2017. That was, wow, it's been a year and a half after that they became our strategic prayer directors. They have grown in the role and have executed it really well. So what we're going to hear from Ron and Candi is how do you get to be an intercessor? What is an intercessor? What does intercessory prayer look like for bringing together the scattered peoples of Ephraim and seeing the whole house of Israel restored? So I think we'll find it to be a very interesting and enlightening interview because they have so many quotable quotes, good sound bites in this, what will be a two-part interview. So we live in interesting times, Stefania, and you and I will talk about this at the end of the program, but going along with Ron and Candi talking about prayer, we have Barry Phillips and David Jones doing a midrash, which they call Love and Warfare, which talks about the weapons of our warfare. And lo and behold, prayer is right there up at the top. So how can you give our audience a little bit of a preview on the midrash?
Yeah, the midrash really fits really well both with the interview with Ron and Candi, where they're talking about prayer, and this whole aspect of what they're talking about is, loving one another, and also where it all, who are we fighting against? Who are we battling with? What is the perspective we're to take on this? Do we take a natural perspective with the human eye, or is something much deeper in that? And I'll leave it mysterious for the listener right now, so that they jump right into that midrash. But it's very appropriate for the interview that we had with Ron and Candi.
Yes, it is, and also a fitting cliffhanger for the next follow-on show where Ron and Candi will finish out their story. But we do live in troublesome times. One would say, well, when has the world not been in troublesome times? So what we're going to hear from Ron and Candi, what we're going to hear from Barry and David, and also from Will Spires, who's our musical guest this time, are wise words of encouragement, exhortation, practical advice from the scriptures on how to walk out the righteous, loving, compassionate path that our Redeemer has called us to. So why don't we go then to Sequim, Washington, and talk with Ron and Candi Runyon. Well, welcome to another interview with Reunion Roadmap. This is Al McCarn. Today we go to Sequim, Washington, and we visit BYNA's prayer directors, Ron and Candi Runyon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Al.
Good to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's good not only to participate, but to catch up with what you've been doing over the last, it's been 3 years since I had the blessing of interviewing you, and that was before you became our prayer directors. You've now been in the position for over 2 years, And why don't we just start there with your experience as BYNA's strategic prayer directors? Tell our audience, what does that position entail? What do you do, and how do you do it?
Yeah, sure. We haven't been prayer directors before this time, but we had hearts for prayer. In our walk, we've always participated in intercessory prayer groups for the last almost 30 years. And so our hearts were always to continue to be with the people that are praying. And when asked to step into this role as prayer directors, we did so with much fear and trembling because we didn't know what, quote, being directors would require of us and whether we had the requisite skill set to fill those shoes. And that's still a question, but we continue to walk one step in front of the other and let Abba lead us in the things that we should do. It's been a real privilege to be a part of it. We have some sincere people that pray with us on a weekly basis for BYNA Yosef North America. We can tell by the way people pray, by the words that they say, that they're people that are constantly before the Lord in their own prayer closets. And it's a real privilege to pray with people like that. And also, even when people get busy and they get a chance to just check in with the prayer team, the chance to pray together is still very special. Abba gives us a chance to enter into his presence in prayer and put our petitions and our requests before him, and to be able to stand side by side and do that with hearts that are in tune is a real strengthening time in prayer. And sometimes in our prayer time we get a little, the umbrella gets a little broader as to what's on our hearts as a whole, as a group. And other times it narrows in and we're all pretty focused on the same issue in prayer. And those are times when the Spirit of the Lord can move in our midst. And really we get a sense that His Spirit is praying through us back the things that he wants to hear, that he wants us to speak. And so being part of the team and being able to facilitate that has been special for us. And it is a real task of commitment and joy that we set our clock by, even in this time of lockdown. We can set our clock by, what day of the week is it? Well, we prayed 3 days ago. Okay, it must be Tuesday. So it's become a real-time anchor for us, like a flag in the week of importance to us, that we can join with our brethren from across the country and be able to use the incredible technology that we have available to us to not only see each other's faces, hear what's going on in each other's lives, lift up our personal concerns, and then lift up the concerns for BYNA Yosef North America.
Well, like Ron said, we've never done anything like this before, been leaders of anything like this. It was a real growing experience for me in learning how to step up and know my own opinion and be unafraid to say that, to say my opinion. And so personally, it's been a real growing time, but it's also been a time where the things that the Lord has already put within us have a place to go, kind of. He made a place for us
Our gifting.
to express his heart through us, if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's been a huge blessing to do that for me. Yeah.
So, in other words, as our Father usually does, he has you right where he wants you.
He found a way to get us there, sure enough.
Well, let me ask this question, because I am always curious about the answer from prayer warriors. What is an intercessor, and how does an intercessor differ from an ordinary praying person?
Well, I can address that from my own personal experience, and it may not be every intercessor's personal experience. How the Lord has worked that word intercession into me is to stand in the gap. And what's the gap? sometimes that gap is different from week to week or month to month. But he'll put me in a place where I'm not necessarily involved in the actual event, but he'll put the burden on my heart to stand in the midst and stand for that event before my King. And the burden that he puts on me isn't always a personal burden. In the sense of B'nai Yosef North America, he has given us a place to stand in the gap for B'nai Yosef North America, to stand in prayer before our King and making requests and hearing his heart in the direction that he would have us go, and to pray for those that are in leadership, that they would also hear his heart so that we can continue to be on the path that he's laid out for us. So it's kind of a combination. I've seen or heard people talk about the watchman on the wall, and it can at times be that also. And I feel like that place of intercession, depending on what the Ruach is doing at that moment, can either be a looking out from the wall or can be a looking into our King. And that's the way I walk out that call of intercession in my life.
I think the Lord gives, I think that prayer, number one, is the foundation of anything that starts. It starts with prayer. And if we don't learn to pray, then I think we're handicapped a little bit. But I also think the Lord gives us the intercessory burdens in different arenas. Like for instance, Ron mentioned about we have a heart to pray for BYNA, because what BYNA is doing is exactly what is on our hearts, and that is the restoration of his kingdom. And the understanding of Judah and Israel and Ephraim and bringing those two sticks together, that has been on our hearts for years. So this is a perfect venue for us to exercise the heart he's given us. I think everybody has a place, first of all, that we all are commanded to pray, but number two, there are specific places of burdens, the specific burdens the Lord places on our hearts, whether it's for our children, our community, locations on the land, all kinds of different specific burdens that we carry with us. That's how I see intercession, and just the foundation of everything in our lives comes from prayer. Mm-hmm. And from listening. And it, of course, it's not just telling God that we need a this or a that, or so-and-so's sick. It's like praying what like Ron said, praying back to him, praying back to the Lord, what he's doing right now. And in our lives, in a global way or in a community way, and in a very tight family way, all the way, all places in our lives that come up. I think that is the essence of why we're here with BYNA, and that is because BYNA is about doing what the Lord showed us.
Those are succinct answers, and I think we can agree that all of God's people, all followers of Yeshua, are called to pray, but are some called to a ministry of prayer that is more focused and more intense?
Yes, absolutely. We obviously our lives should conform to what we saw Yeshua do, and remember to walk even as he's walked. And we see repeatedly in the Gospels about him pulling away for a private time with his Father, prayer time. Yeah. All of us have to have that prayer time within our connection with our Creator, and our prayer time should not be limited to the time that we pull away and get on our knees. Our prayer time should be all of our whole day. We should have open communication with our Father. But there are times when we need to isolate ourselves from what's going around us to be able to better hear the Ruach speaking through us. And that is very valuable for all of us as we walk our faith walk. But that there are those that are called to a ministry of prayer, and they're in their way, they're burden bearers. They often spend their time in prayer, praying for things other than themselves, often, and for considerable amounts of time. They're picking up the burdens that Father has given them. They're not carrying burdens that they've chosen to pick up, but they're carrying the burdens that the Holy Spirit has given them to intercede and to just do business with our King about. It's a ministry that, in some ways, that is a ministry that's purely given by the Spirit of the Lord, and you can always stand in the gap, but to stand in the gap the way that some of the great prayer warriors we've read about over the history, to stand in the gap like that isn't a choice you make on your own. It's a calling that Abba puts in your life, and that doesn't mean that you can't be an intercessor if you don't pray 6 hours a day. But be an intercession for the burdens that He puts on your heart. Be before Him and say, what is it? What is the burden that you're asking me to lift before you today? And then just be faithful to that burden.
We have all known in our making the rounds of prayer and intercession, it seems that the most effective, or at least most consistent intercessors are the older people, particularly older women. And I just wonder if you think, what you would think, if perhaps does the gift shift, does the ministry shift with age and station of life and ability to give more time over to this burden bearing of intercession, or is it something that is put on someone for their entire life?
I think that I think that it wouldn't necessarily have to be something that's been put on them for their entire life, but it could be something that they didn't walk in until they had a different place in their life, i.e. not caring for children in their home, where they're distracted so much. Although we know of some absolutely incredible intercessors that are mothers. I also know some fantastic intercessors that are men, that pray in a way that I can't pray. It's a gift that God puts on their hearts. I pray my way and they pray their way. I'm not attempting to pray like the great prayers of the world. That was something Father had to work into my spirit, is I don't have to pray like the men I think are great prayers. What I have to do is pray from a place of honesty and a place of listening. And I think that as we get older, we get better at listening.
I think being one of those older women that over time, we all live our lives and we develop and we gain wisdom. And I think that is an element that increases as we get older, not just having fewer distractions in life, but the things that did distract us in life have gained us wisdom that we can now pray with understanding in ways we couldn't before, or didn't know before, because we hadn't lived before. And I think personally, as a woman, and I'm not saying men don't have this also, but in their on a certain level, women can connect to the heart of God easier than men. Not that men can't, and I don't know if Ron agrees with that or not, but I've just seen that in my own experience, and seen that as I've grown up around other intercessory women who were older than me, who just seem to, the only way I can know is connect really well. So yeah.
I think that men and women don't necessarily pray
not the same.
Just because we're not the same. We don't approach God with the same personality, even our prayer personality. Men have a little bit more of an aggressive personality, and women have a more of a soft, nurturing personality, which is the gifts that God gave us.
But there's a balance in all that.
Right.
Yeah. So I think both are absolutely essential for complete. Looks like He made men and women for, to express the perfectness and completeness of his character. And
these are pure generalities. Yeah. We know some pretty warrior prayers that are women.
Very, almost you could say militant, and going out and doing physical things to express what they believe the Lord is leading them to do.
Right.
And we've known men who are very soft-hearted and sensitive, who are just broken before the Lord in the places where the Lord has burdened their hearts.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not.
No, we haven't seen hard and fast rules, but I, like you, have seen many older women as great intercessors, and evidence that they've been intercessors for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
I can testify to the same thing. And so then what a surprise. God did not create everyone with the same callings, gifts, and abilities.
Righto.
Go figure.
Yeah.
Why would that be? Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe the best thing we could do is not try to fit everybody into the same mold.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, as prayer directors, as intercessors, let me ask you, what are some of your greatest joys and what are some of your greatest frustrations?
Well, one thing I've learned over the last few years is that, I've always tended to think, okay, we're here to pray. Let's get down to it. Let's pray. But in many of our prayer calls, actually, there has been lots of conversation. But I've learned that is really essential because we need to, one, get to know each other and how we think and how we feel. But also we need to hear from each other and what the Lord is showing us. And that happens through discussion and back and forth things and bringing things to the table that needs to be shared with other people. And it's so interesting that when that happens, how the Lord somehow in some way brings all these different things together. And all of a sudden, there's a laser focus on one thing.
And now, Full Scale War by Will Spires from his album Seeds.
It's a full-scale war on a hard-turned sound by the living that's loud, and it's letting the camp of the Lord. If the fire won't burn and the back stay turned by, in the struggle there'll be war. Let us fire inside, bring resurrection power, so let us hope for the Lord. It's when His truth comes in, new day begins. Truth is, we all want something, but an impure mind can't see. Like the bound dog, sure when the desert is sure to let the captives free. But if we don't prize a holy righteous eye, how can a ship descend and bring glory? We're talking about rise up, sanctify, line up and punch away that accursed thing has got to start today. It's a full-scale war on a hard-turned sound by the living that's loud, and it's letting the camp of the Lord. If the fire won't burn, then a back stay turned by. In the strength of their report, let us fire burn bright, His holy delight reign. Resurrection power, when His truth comes and a new day begins. Babylonian robe, fire down the silver and a wind of gold. Now you can't come to your soul, but a heart laid low before the Lord can truly be resurrected. Muster courage now. Whoa. It's a full-scale war. Kadosh le'Adonai, be of a ready mind now. Let our heart be pure. So let your fire burn so that we can march right through now. It's a full-scale war. Let your fire inside. Holy delight. Resurrection fire. When the truth comes and a new day beginning. In the strength of the Lord, let the fire burn bright. It's holy delight. Resurrection power, when your truth falls and a new day beginning. It's a full-scale war.
Shalom, everybody. Welcome to the mid-rush portion of Reunion Roadmap. This is David Jones. With me is Barry Phillips. Shalom, brother.
Shalom, brother.
Got a lot going on in the world today as we're recording this, and we were talking a little bit before we hit the record button and decided it was time to just go ahead and hit the record button. There's a lot of unrest in the world today, which makes it easy to take our eyes off what is really important. There are underlying issues to a lot of things that happen, and sometimes the issue is not what's in front of us. Sometimes it's what caused what's in front of us. And when we were talking about this, we realized that the battle is more so spiritual than physical. If we could get the focus right, then we believe the battle could be won. And I'll turn this back over to you in a minute here, Barry, but let's start with a scripture reference. I'm thinking of 2 Corinthians 10 in verse 3. It says, though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not, we know this, are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. Verse 5, we destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, take every thought captive to the obedience of the Messiah. So how do we take every thought captive is an interesting way to go there. But we're thinking more so on, okay, we walk in the flesh, we see things in the flesh, but how do you see our real battle might not be what's in front of us. The battle isn't here. Maybe it is a spiritual battle, which I'm inclined to believe it is. But a lot of areas to go in here, Barry. What do you think?
Well, I am of the firm opinion, David, that resolving issues in the spiritual realm through prayer and intercession and actions of obedience brings resolve in the physical realm. You and I can raise our voice in social media about our personal feelings pertaining to current events and upheaval taking place. We can blame whoever we want to blame. We can see whatever root we want to, acknowledge. For that matter, we can join others in the streets and raise our voice. There's a lot that we can do physically, but is that the right battle? Oftentimes what we find out is that media, news media in particular, will distract us. We will find out, we have been focused on one current event and inundated in the news media with whatever that event entails, all the while, meanwhile, back at the ranch, everything else is taking place, and we're not aware of it. So while we're spinning our wheels on one thing, the world is turning in a different direction. And because we're not aware of it, we don't know how to pray. It comes down to an idea that I've been wrestling with for a few weeks now, and that is that we're fighting the wrong battle. People are very emotional right now, very passionate, I guess is a better way to say it, about their perspectives. The whole corona issue inflamed us, angered us over some things of governmental controls. And now we have the current issues of upheaval and violence in our streets. I'm reminded of this verse from Matthew 24. Yeshua said, and because of the increase in lawlessness, the love of many shall become cold. The real battle, it would seem to me, is cold love. If we were to seek the Father in the Spirit through prayer and through scripture and through intercessions, seeking to find ways, where is it that I go and act in obedience to curtail this? The issue is our love has become cold. in the body of Messiah, the Hebrew roots community in particular, we have been exemplifying a cold love. We say, well, you got to love everybody. Well, yeah, we do. But when that love has no passion and no fire, no sincere content to it, it's cold.
You're got a great point on there, and I agree with that. If we truly sought to do what Yeshua told us to do, this I command you love one another. And this is a commandment you've had from the beginning. It's nothing new that I'm giving you.
Right.
The Shema, hear Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. Well, that's awesome. But we forget the other part of that, which is just as important. When Yeshua was asked about that, he quoted with the Shema, but then he said, and there's more to it.
Love your neighbor as yourself.
You shall love your neighbor as yourself. It's easy if you look down on someone to bring violence against them.
You count them worthy of such.
Right. And what the Torah is telling us to do is to don't look down on anyone. Even those who do not believe the same way you do, aren't we supposed to be a light toward those people? We're not supposed to hate these people. And what I'm saying is people who do not believe the same way that you do. So with us, if we're supposed to show the love of Yahweh, to show the love of Messiah, sometimes that is a battle. And this is why I believe Yeshua told us to show love to those who you don't feel are worthy of it. Show love to those who mistreat you. Show love to those who you feel are mishandled. All of this is relevant for us, and I do believe that in essence is somewhat warfare. Because when we are extending the heart of the Father to people around us, we can tear down walls and break dividing factors. If we're keeping our focus in all things toward the Father, that's going to bring us into restoration, where we're too busy fighting each other. And so when we're fighting each other, we're not looking toward the Father.
So in recent years, our adversary, the accuser of the brethren, I would assume, I started to say discern, but I would assume that he has stood before the throne and accused us of not loving each other sincerely. It doesn't take very much investigation to find the factions, the disagreements, the heated arguments, the divisions. And, it's not enough that we can disagree. We have to insult the other party to prove our legitimacy. And that's wrong. That's a sin. Yahweh asked Job, he said, are you going to condemn me to justify yourself?
Right.
Oh, and that happens so often. So if the body of Messiah is not acting in love, even to the body of Messiah, certainly then we're not acting in love toward those who are not a part of our ranks. So if there is a lack of love in the earth, then there is to be a manifestation of that lack of love. Well, what we have is violent hatred taking place in the earth. I understand people can be frustrated. I get it. There has been enormous injustice for generations. I understand that. And it's not just, in one part to another part. It's abroad. People have been unjustly treated. Among the tenets of the Torah are two stalwart pillars, and that is that we should act in tzedakah and mishpatim, and righteousness and justice. We are to be those who seek for justice, for the righting of wrongs, for the treating of people correctly. That's what the Torah is firmly about. And seeking to get that accomplished, it has to be established first in the heavenlies before we would have authority in the earth to see it take place. We can't just stand up with a placard or a sign or a megaphone and make verbal demonstrative demands with there being a conquering of the spirit realm first.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's like, you're not saying that we shouldn't speak out, but if that's all we're doing, we're not going to make any headway.
Our voice is lost in the mix. When you're mixing down a song with a variety of instruments and vocals, you can overemphasize one thing to the exception of the vocals. So you have all this music, but you can't hear what they're saying. Well, that's been the charge and the allegation for a lot of popular music. Great music, you don't know what it says, but it's a catchy tune. So our actions sometimes have the same issue. David, I think the Father is calling his body to seek his face. What if the Father were to say to us, the root of this issue is not what you expect, it's over here. And so we're trying to get rid of weeds in our yard, but we're working in the wrong section. Yeshua said that the wheat and the tares will grow up together. And well, should we go out and pull up the tares now? No, because they look too much like wheat. Wait until the fruit of them begins to be manifested. Then you can discern properly what is what. So we need the Father to show us, here's your issue. This is the root cause. This is where you need to focus. And if we will do that, it may say, well, all prayer and no action does nothing. I agree. But if you're acting without prayer and without understanding, then you're probably not going to be fruit bearing.
I think that when you were talking the wheat and the tares, I think that is a great analogy to go with that, because you can't really say which is which until they do start to produce fruit, which means there's a certain age of maturity. There's a certain growing process that has to go with it as they're all growing together. And then at some point it's kind of too late, because like you were saying, if you pull out all the tares, you can damage the wheat because the roots get all intertangled and working with each other there. So the problem is we're looking around saying that, all these are tares, and that person's a tare, and that person's a tare, and I'm wheat. And maybe we just need to get to a point of learning to grow and learning to produce fruit, and let the Father weed out.
There are some wheat fields around here that are coming up really nice at the moment. And as I was driving by them, I was looking and seeing that the heavy kernels of wheat at the top of the stalk were getting full enough that they were beginning to bend over. A tare will stand straight up because it doesn't have anything to weigh it, no fruit to it. It's just a weed. Fruit bearing is how you tell what is what, which is which. That which is fruit bearing will bend over and humble itself, yielding itself, being a servant, if you will, in appearance. The tares will stand straight up arrogantly. The difference between what is what, which is which, is humility and arrogance.
Well, that's a great way to put it. Even in our trials, are we willing to be humble? Are we willing to hold on to that humility? Or, let's face it. Barry, come on. It's easier to be arrogant. It's easier to hold on to pride. It's easier to hold on to hurts, unforgiveness, and it's easier to do that. But
because we're right. Hallelujah.
Yeah. And in some cases you may be, but that doesn't make the behavior right. So I think this is why we are commanded to forgive. We are commanded to love one another. We are commanded not to turn the other cheek when injustice is being done. We are commanded to stand up for the life of our neighbor. So, there's a lot that we are supposed to be doing, but we need to make sure we are doing so because of love of the Father and love for his people, love for that which he has created, and not allowing hate to come in to bring divisiveness and to polarize people. It's easier. It's harder to forgive. And that's kind of why we're commanded to do it, because it's not something that would just naturally happen.
True. And what must happen is we have to bring this to a close.
I know we're out of time.
All right, folks, again, write to us, send your questions, your comments to Reunion Roadmap at BYNA josephna.com.
Here's Will Spires singing Love One Another from his album Seeds. Check out Will Spires on YouTube.
Love
That was Will Spires, his song Love One Another, one of his earlier songs from, I think it was his first album, Seeds. That was a fitting end to the Midrash, again titled Love and Warfare. And Zephaniah, what did you take from the things Barry and David shared with us?
Well, I appreciated the passage that they shared in Corinthians, where they're basically, it's very similar to the one in Ephesians 6, clarifying for us where our battle is. And so when we get into that war room, which is the prayer closet, they're reiterating to us, which many of us know but need to be reminded of, that we wrestle not against flesh and blood. So all the chaos around us, protect ourselves from getting too emotional about what is happening, too caught up in it, and come at it with an attitude of prayer and saying, I know what to pray about. I know what I'm needing to do in that war room of prayer. And if you've seen the movie War Room, which I'd encourage people to see that, it really tells you about the role of an intercessor and what change can be enacted in that place.
It's timely advice, timely counsel. As we see here in the United States, we are still dealing with the aftermath of the, how else can I describe it, brutal, untimely death of George Floyd in Minneapolis. And what this has done is opened old wounds. And I know, at least in my case, and I am seeing in the hearts of others as they've expressed it, calling attention to a longstanding problem that we just, for some reason, didn't recognize. And if it is this much of a simmering issue in the Black community, then how much do we have issues like that hasn't been recognized in other communities? No wonder we're fragmented. No wonder we look at each other with suspicion and we talk past each other. Well, maybe now is the time to listen, really listen. You know, a lot of progress has been made in the last 50, 60 years, but clearly the heart issues have never been addressed. And, you know, fighting that fight and dealing with those heart issues is a matter of spiritual warfare. And that's what Ron and Candi and Barry and David and Will Spires are all addressing here. You know, what occurs to me among many things is the words that Yeshua said when his disciples were trying to prevent those who were baptizing, but not in the name of Yeshua. And he said, those who are not against us are for us. Well, you know what? We have a whole lot of people on this walk of redemption toward the restoration of all of God's kingdom, all his people, and they are of different colors, different political positions, different ethnicities and national origins. Maybe we should, in our spiritual eyes, look upon them as children of the same king, the same God, rather than opponents. What do you think?
Absolutely. And when we talk about spiritual warfare, when we talk about the spiritual dynamics taking place, we're not talking about skin color. It goes beyond that. It's the principalities and the powers of the air that want to basically manipulate us. That's really what they're doing, to treat somebody differently based upon how they look. And how much do we have that deal with inside of all of us? That is a matter of warfare, how Hasatan has really gotten in there, the accuser of the brethren, and has wreaked havoc in our relationships one with another.
That's the truth. And unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to end it because we are out of time. But I will say, it seems like the first step toward victory is recognizing the problem. And that's what I think we have already. We've recognized the problem. So that's all we have for this edition of Reunion Roadmap. Thank you for listening. On behalf of Zephaniah Pappas, Barry Phillips, and David Jones, this is Al McCarn. Shavua Tov.
Thank you for joining us on Reunion Roadmap, a production of BYNA Yosef North America. Please come back next week for another visit with the people of the emerging house of Joseph here in North America.